And it's that time. Yeah, I heard the whistle. So it must be time again for our time with Tyler Baker to preview another great weekend in the NFL. He's the man, the myth, the legend behind the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. I'll tell you what, Tyler, it's great having you again here on the PCC Multiverse. We're back again. My name is Gerald Glasser from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. Week 13 is upon us, my friend. Mm-hmm. It is now the nitty-gritty time, it is now this weekend is a do or die for many fantasy football teams.
Yes, it is. Myself included. I'm in 10 leagues this season. One of them I did not do well at all. And I can't blame it all on injuries. I just had a crappy team. It happens. But I am in 3 win and you're in situations. If I drop 2 of them, I can still get in. I would need a little help. But I'm in 3. If I win, I'm in. So yeah, in 3 of my leagues, you're just trying to make the best decision that you can. And so you have to be informed, and you really have to, how much of a risk do I want to take? Looking at upside and floors of some of these guys. So yeah, for a lot of people, it's make or break right now. And go to the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast Facebook group, get your questions on there, and we'll do the best we can to give you some direction if you need it.
Well, you've given me great direction this season. I'm right now 8-4.
Oh, good.
So I'm because of your guidance, your tutelage, and you and the staff of the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. It just cannot thank you guys enough. So I think I'm second place in my division. So I think I'm doing okay. I have second best record overall out of the 10 teams, whatnot. So I think I'm pretty good, even if I'm not going to have the greatest weekend in the world. So I think I'm still in. So I'm definitely looking forward to the fantasy football playoffs. I think I got a solid team, not a spectacular team, but definitely a team that can produce some decent numbers. And obviously it's worked out so far, thanks to your guidance and the staff from Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast.
No, you get to take all the credit for you.
You get
to take all the credit. Okay. We just give a little advice and help keep. I help people keep informed. I have a super short podcast to let you know what's going on. I'm watching all these practice reports and everything. It's just about making good decisions, and you made those decisions. So it's your
actually, your cheat sheet at the beginning of the year off of ffpaydirt.com.
Yeah,
that basically was actually off another site, but now it's from ffpaydirt.com. Yeah, your guidance actually gave me that winning edge.
Yeah, well, let's keep rolling with it. Let's get a championship out of it.
Yes, indeed. And you can keep on rolling indeed, not only with the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast Facebook group, but also as well the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast, which actually drops on every Tuesday and Saturday, so you can get the edge for your fantasy football team. You want to check it out today on Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, SoundCloud, Overcast.fm, and Player.fm, not to mention anything that takes in Apple Podcasts. So you got one of those other apps out there. Definitely you'll pick up our show and his show indeed. So we got a great weekend in the NFL coming up. I think it all starts off with Minnesota and Atlanta as far as a great offensive show.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. Now, there are 3 teams that are poised to make the playoffs from the NFC South. You have the 8-4 Carolina Panthers and the 8-3 Carolina Panthers are going to play at New Orleans, who is also 8-3. So that could be a really important as to who actually wins that division. But in third place in that division is Atlanta at 7-4. Now it's a really good record for the NFC, and they face Minnesota. That's going to be a tough matchup. But Atlanta has been playing really well lately, and it looks like they're going to get Devonta Freeman back, which is really good news for fantasy players, including you, because I know he's on your team. He practiced in full today. He is ready to go. And so I think it's very safe to assume that he is going to play this weekend. And I don't think he's going to have any limitations because he had plenty of time off. He's got all those concussion things out of the way. He is ready to go. Also, Jameis Winston is going to start this week. So if you had Jameis Winston and Like I have Jameis Winston in a 16-team league. Well, when you play in a 16-team league, there's not a lot of other quarterbacks out there. So I've been rolling with Tom Savage the last 2 weeks and have managed to win because the rest of my team is pretty good. But Jameis Winston will be back. Also, Sterling Shepard is practicing in full this week. So that's good to see him back. He had some migraines. It looks like he's got those issues figured out. Now, the running game in Green Bay, Ty Montgomery is going to be out again. Jamal Williams has been filling in, the rookie. He's been doing really well. I mean, he's been putting up solid numbers, but it looks like Aaron Jones, he had a limited practice today. That's their other rookie running back. He is trying to get on the field this week. They're trying to bring him along. So if you've been writing Jamal Williams the past couple of weeks, watch the practice reports. Aaron Jones could be playing this weekend. That could diminish his role just a little bit. Also, Greg Olsen finally got off of IR, got into a game last week, played, I think, 27 snaps, maybe 23 snaps. Re-injured that foot. They did x-rays on it. There was no damage, but he did re-injure it. He did not practice today. Now that could have just been trying to get him ready for the big divisional game this weekend against New Orleans. So we're going to watch Friday's practice report pretty closely to see if Greg Olsen practices. If not, I think he'll be a game time decision. He still could play. But we'll just have to see about that. There are a couple matchups that I like this week. As far as like individual fantasy players, I really like Cooper Kupp this week. Robert Woods is not practicing, doesn't look like he's going to play, and they have Arizona. And Sammy Watkins is going to draw Patrick Peterson. So if you have Sammy Watkins, you might not want to play him this week. He is going to face Patrick Peterson, but I think Cooper Kupp could have a big game this week. And then also Kenyon Drake in Miami. He looks like he's going to get a start, going to get a full workload this week. So he could be a sneaky guy to play. And we get Josh Gordon back this week. Now that's the wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns that hasn't played since 2014. When he did play, he was spectacular. Hugh Jackson this week has said that he wants to play him a lot. I think that's just a coach saying things that coaches say, but Josh Gordon is going to be on the field and we're going to be able to see what he looks like. So if you have Gordon, I think it'd be a little risky to play him this week, but this week is going to give us a really good look at who he is as a receiver because we haven't seen him in so long. But that'll be an exciting game to watch just to see Josh Gordon back on a football field again.
That is a tremendous update indeed. Definitely a lot of information flowing. But you will have a major update upon that even more in your Saturday podcast on the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast coming up this Saturday on Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, SoundCloud, also Player.fm and Overcast.fm.
All of them.
Yes, all of them. But yes, you'll have an update on those iffy, like you said, Greg Olsen, you'll have an update on him, I'm sure, and then so many other players that are on the injury report, whether or not they're going to be able to play. Because like you said, this is a make or break weekend for a lot of potential playoff teams and a lot of teams that are, if they don't make the right move, they're going to be out for the season. So,
yeah. So I'm going to be watching the practice reports on Friday, going to be combing over everything. And Saturday's podcast is a really good one to listen to because it'll help you prepare to set your lineup, because the Friday practice report really gives you a very good indication as to who's going to play and even what role they're going to play going into Sunday's game. So Saturday's podcast is a good one to listen to. And of course you can get on the Facebook discussion group is a really good place to ask questions and you'll get some good input, and let's win championships.
Definitely. I cannot agree with you more. I'm actually going to be posting my lineup and my reserves right here coming up very soon on the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast Facebook group, so I can get a consensus on where to go. I like your idea with Cooper Kupp. I actually did put him in the starting lineup this week ahead of Sammy Watkins, even though Watkins had a great weekend last week, but you've talked about him all over the place with production. So definitely some great thoughts in there indeed. But for all your latest information, Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast, you can just go right there on Facebook, talk to the group, Your questions get answered on any lineup changes or any still potential waiver wire pickups you can make that might make a change in your fantasy football team, because I'm telling you, this is it. There is no, there's no more, oh, okay, maybe next week. This is it for those teams that are like right on the cut line. This is the week to make a move.
It is. And every week from here on out is just so important, because once you get to the playoffs, you can have a bad, like it's happened to me where I've gone to the playoffs with just a monster team, just crushing people, hurting people's feelings with how bad I beat them. And then you get into the playoffs and guys have a bad week sometimes. So you just want to go into these next couple of weeks just making the best decisions that you can. I'm not a fortune teller or anything like that, but winning in fantasy football is about making informed decisions and minimizing your risks. And so if you want to talk about some of the risky players on your roster, or, hey, do I want to roll the dice on this guy? Like normally you probably wouldn't play a Cooper Kupp, especially in an important matchup. He's a slot receiver. But when you have the number 2 receiver is out, the number 1 receiver is going to draw Patrick Peterson. Cooper Kupp has a really good chance of having a big game. I'm not saying he's going to, because I don't know, but the indicators are there for Cooper Kupp to have a good game this weekend.
Definitely some great advice indeed. Once again, it is Tyler Baker from the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast. Another episode drops this Saturday. Also, other episodes drop on Tuesday as well. But you want to check it out on Apple Podcasts, Libsyn, Overcast.fm, Player.fm, and SoundCloud. And don't forget, you can also ask your fantasy football questions at the Fantasy Football Paydirt Podcast Facebook group. Tyler, it's just been another tremendous week that you've been able to preview for us and gave us all that great information. I cannot thank you enough for being part of the PCC multiverse and dropping all that football knowledge.
Well, thank you guys for keeping me up to date on all things pop culture, man. I love the show. It's great to be on it.
As always, my friend, always great having you a part of the pop culture cosmos.